Dzień dobry, tu Dominika Koprowska
I Michał Walesiak.
Zapraszamy na Naukowe Radio Białowieża.
Hello, welcome everybody. Today we're back to the conference series with our last episode, the fourth one, in which we will talk with remaining four guests. As a small reminder, our conference series was recorded during Białowieża Ecology Conference in September 2024. And during the conference, we were talking with some guests about their experience in Białowieża, about their research, and about the importance of conservation of natural forests. And the detailed introduction can be found in the third episode of the conference series, so the first one in English. So please listen to that one if you're new to this series. So without further wasting further words, let us give the voice to the speakers. And today's speakers are Anwesha Dutta, Camilla Wikenros, Patrick Kacic, and Katharina Kasper. Please enjoy.
I'm Anwesha Dutta. I'm a senior researcher at the Christian Michelsen Institute in Bergen, Norway. And I'm originally from India, but I've been living in Europe now for over 15 years. I'm a social scientist, and I trained as a political ecologist, which mainly means I study the everyday human-nature relationship because, the kind of discipline I come from, we start with the premise that humans are embedded in nature and they're not separate from it, and they have coexisted mostly in harmony for centuries, and so on. So a lot of my work basically looks at biodiversity conservation and forestry, but through the human dimensions. And and a lot of the questions that I ask, for example, is how do we carry out conservation in spaces where there is a lot of conflict, not just most of this conflict are about resource distribution. Some get more access, some get less access. Some of the questions are about power, who's making decisions, how are resources distributed. A lot of it also studies a lot of informal ways in which people deal with nature. So, for example, if we have a problem with logging, let's say, and of course logging is banned in a protected area, but that doesn't mean people will not go and log. So a solution to that requires it's not just rooted in ecology, which will tell us about the health of the forest and so on, but also the society as to how do we address these underlying drivers so that people do not say log. So basically those are broadly what I do.
Mm-hmm. So thinking about what you just said, so what would be your take about protecting natural forests? Like, do you think that they should be protected in the way they are, or are there other dimensions that people actually should consider more often?
Yeah, that's a very good question, right? Because a lot of the tension arises between protecting forest and at the same time managing different groups and their interest in that forest. So whether people are going to that forest to forage, or whether people are going to that forest to, build small houses and live there, as we see happening in a lot of the global south countries. So it's called encroachment. Or people are going in there to log, or people are going in there to poach. But then all of that affects the forest. So the way to protect forest would be to address some of these underlying drivers. So why would someone go and poach a wolf? Because most people who grow up with looking at wolf often are aware of that intrinsic value that a wolf has for biodiversity, but because maybe they are so poor, that they would do it for their livelihood. And unless and until these livelihood demands are met, but in a sustainable way, they will not stop killing these wolves. And these are also linked to then issues of power. There are big poaching syndicates. And in that larger game of poaching, these local communities who are actually going into the forest and doing the deed are just pawns. Their role is so small, they get so little money. So there is also a demand side of it, right? Somewhere in the market in Europe or elsewhere, there are demands for dead wolves, for whatever properties, for the meat or the skin and so on. And it's the same whether we extend it to rhinos or ivory for the case of elephant, or pangolin actually is the most poached mammal.
Okay.
Yeah,
wow, I didn't
and
know.
who would think the pangolin, because there's a huge demand for pangolins in Chinese medicine. So I think a lot of the demand side drivers need to be met. Inequality, poverty needs to be addressed. There has to be livelihood options given to people, housing, and also their ways of associating with the forest needs addressing. So I think ecologists have to work together with social scientists, but also with governments, if we were to have sustainable forests for the future.
Thanks a lot. I also think that's very important, and it's like very nice to hear about those like other dimensions that simple the nature point of view or ecologist point of view. So thanks a lot. Last question that I wanted to ask you would be about your experience here. I know that you haven't yet been in your strict reserve walk, but do you have any impressions that you would like to share about like being here or being in this area, or like do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, thanks for that. So while it's my first time here, I have actually been part of a paper with Katharina Nowak, where we have the Białowieża as a case in terms of national security affecting conservation. So as we know, Białowieża is, of course, these are old growth primary forest. It's very high in biodiversity in every possible way, but it's also a very securitized space because we are very close to the Belarusian border, and we cannot isolate what is going on in global politics or in Ukraine or the migration crisis to how people in the people and the animals and non-humans in Białowieża are affected. So we write about that, the border walls and it affecting animal movements, predator, carnivores, others, or the huge military presence, which I'm told is quite new for this small village. And all of that has an effect on the people, on, the non-human lives. And there's now, I hear, a 2-kilometer exclusion zone as well. So there is an emerging body of literature that looks at military's impact on the landscape. And I think that's also, and most of those studies come from outside of Europe, but we are in Europe, in Central Europe. And I think Białowieża is so crucial to understand those geopolitical and ecological dimension. But otherwise, I am super looking forward to going to the strict reserve tomorrow. And 2 days ago at night, I heard a lot of the roe deer because it's rutting season as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing some herds maybe. So yeah, I'm super looking forward to the visits, and it's been really, really nice so far.
Okay, thank you very much. So I hope you will enjoy the walk in the street reserve.
Thank you so much.
I'm Camilla Wikenros, coming from Sweden, from the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences.
And your area of research, what is like the main things that you try to learn about?
I mainly work with carnivore and ungulate ecology, and also quite a lot of management related questions as well. So predator-prey interactions, how large predators are affecting both their prey species, their surrounding environments, and also other carnivore species, both in different sizes, large one and mesocarnivores, for example. Yeah.
So, like some examples of the animals that you're focused on, like just so the viewers know what is large carnivore or a mesocarnivore, for example.
So I mainly work with wolves, but I also study interactions between wolves and other large carnivores like brown bears and lynx, for example, and also how wolves affect their prey species. And in Scandinavia, they mainly feed on moose. So we both study how often they kill moose, and also if they change the behavior of moose, for example.
And I wanted to ask you about like how your research on carnivores and this predator-prey interactions. How do you think that in what way you could learn from natural forest systems? Like, would the natural forest systems or studying natural forest system, would it be useful in your area of research? Could you comment on that?
Since I am working in an area where humans have a very large impact on all trophic levels, so humans actually affect both the number and the demography of both large carnivores like wolves, ungulate species like moose, and also the environment through forestry and agriculture and infrastructure. It's really interesting to compare the results that we get from a ecosystem where human with their different activities, maybe not human density, but more the activities that humans have in the landscape, and compare that with the results from more pristine areas, since the results differ quite a lot. And in my system, we can't detect those large ecological effects that large carnivores have been shown to have in more protected areas where humans have a less impact on different trophic levels.
Could you what kind of effects do you mean that they have, for example, in natural forests, and they don't necessarily have them in the managed forests? Just a few examples for.
One example can be how large predators affect the behavior of their prey species. So in the system where I study, where humans have a large impact and actually is a larger cause of mortality than the predator species are, we can't really see that the ungulates are changing their behavior in response to in a better way adjust their behavior to avoid predation, and that is things that have been shown in protected areas like here in Białowieża.
All right. Okay. So because it seems also logic to me that if a human has a bigger impact in killing some animal, that obviously this animal probably should adjust more to human interactions rather than the carnivore's interactions, right? But yes. Okay, while in system where humans are not there as much, it's more important probably the role of the large predators. Yes.
Yeah, since the risk of being killed by a large predator is much larger in those environments.
Great. Amazing. I think it's a very interesting research. You've mentioned Białowieża Forest, and you are here now. You've been here once before, and during your visit now, you've already visited the strict reserve. So I'm just curious if you have any impressions to share about being in this forest or anything about this experience.
I really enjoy the strict reserve. So I was here in 2012 doing a postdoc here, and also then had the large pleasure to visit the strict reserve. And the other morning when I was there, it's just in some way I actually get a little bit stressed walking there, because it's so many things to look at, and you don't want to miss anything, because compared to the forest back home, it's a huge difference. So it's really enjoyable to be able to spend some time there.
Amazing. Thanks a lot for the talk, and I hope you will enjoy the rest of the conference. And thanks.
Thank you very much.
My name is Patrick Kacic. I'm a PhD student coming from University of Würzburg in Germany and the German Aerospace Center. And my background is analyzing forest structure from a perspective that is above the canopy. So Mainly working with satellite data, and so I'm assessing the photosynthetic activity, structural differences of forests. That is really my research focus, and I consider myself to be a remote sensing data scientist, but with background in environmental science, and that's what motivated me to come to this place, because there's this interdisciplinary approach that I really like.
Mm-hmm. And could you tell us a few sentences about the poster that you have at the conference and the main results of your studies?
Yeah. So my PhD is embedded in a research project that covers different perspectives of analyzing forest structure in the context of experimental silviculture treatments, meaning there have been interventions to enhance structural complexity.
Like meaning, for example, partial cutting or leaving dead wood or not leaving dead wood. This is what you mean, right?
Yeah, there's like a really diversity of structures being implemented in German broadleaf forests to enhance the structural complexity along two axes. So deadwood structure, as you mentioned, and like different arrangements of cuttings. So really heterogeneity in structure was created in those forests, and this is the research area that we have. So we have different regions in Germany, and all the PhDs of our project, the name is Beta 4, it's led by University of Würzburg, focus on those sites, and that is really special. And it's also really nice for perspective from remote sensing, because we absolutely know what do we see in our data. So what are the forest structures that we are measuring, because in remote sensing, specifically satellite remote sensing, it's hard to often validate our data, so we can kind of correlate it with in situ measurements or airborne based measurements. But I really like this approach that it's a perspective from above the canopy, from satellites, but then there are 7-8 other PhDs really monitoring soil activity, decomposition processes, measuring for a structure from a ground perspective, higher trophic level. So right now I'm not talking much about my PhD, but I think it's important to know how it is embedded. So we are really linking those different perspectives. And as mentioned before, I'm working on different satellite data sets that characterize different aspects of forest structure. And my poster here is about the assessment of those treatment implementations. So when those interventions have happened, can we see this in our data? And the result is we can really see those treatments well. And there's also some sensitivity to identifying standing deadwood structures. And that is,
So basically you want to, you try to see if changes in the forest structure that are applied on the ground, if they can be seen from space, right? Basically with the satellite data. And what would you say if it would be useful to identify those structures from space, like with satellite data?
The great benefit of satellite data that is really it's cheap. So the data is for free. So the processing is what is effort. But we have this data as time series over multiple decades already. And we also have this data across space. So it's global data that I'm working with. So it's not only about assessing forest structure within our research patches, small scale in Germany, but we can kind of extrapolate, scale our analysis to other forest areas. And the background is that specifically in Germany, we have a great homogeneity of forest structures. So the H-class structures, few tree species dominate the forests. So it's important to produce diversity in structures through those silvicultural treatments, and we can monitor this then. How do our forests develop? Do we see those heterogeneous structures developing?
And those enhancement of forest structure would be mainly to benefit biodiversity, yes? Or some other reasons?
That is what we're assessing in the project. So we have different biodiversity indicators, as I mentioned, and ecosystem functions we're measuring. That is one aspect, but also for future resilience of forests. So forests in Central Europe are exposed to droughts. There is evidence that more complex forests, meaning more diverse structures, different age structures, can better cope with those disturbance to be expected.
So, and as a conclusion then from your research, like, can we see those changes in forest structure from space? Like, how well can we see the changes in the structures from
so
space?
that's also the nice thing about the experimental design, that we have those, we call them distributed cutting, so it's a selective cutting randomly, and then we have aggregated treatments where there is a small gap creation with a diameter of about 30 meters. So it's absolutely not about clear cutting, it's really small scale silvicultural interventions, and we can very well see this development of small gaps. So these 30 meters diameter openings in forests, and it's a characteristic of old growth forests that there are those small scale differences in canopy cover. So this is what is kind of mimicked by our experimental design, and we can see those really well. In those treatments, we can also see sensitivity in our metrics to standing deadwood presence. That is really important for further biodiversity context, because there's like structures for deadwood dependent species.
Yeah, I also know some places in Białowieża Forest where you have like this, you say 30 by 30 meters, so like this openings created because it's often even a few single trees that do a tree fall, like one tree falls and takes another, and actually the opening which is created can be sort of 20 by 20 or 30 by 30 meters. And so speaking about Białowieża Forest, you are here at the conference, and you've been also on a walk in a strict reserve. So could you say a few things about your impressions of the area?
Yeah, I have to say I really liked it, and I kind of had great expectations coming here, because I've seen really nice, impressive pictures, having spoken to other colleagues who really say it's really worth coming to Białowieża, because it's the last primeval forest lowland that we have in Europe. So I think for me as a PhD student in the second year, it's really nice to have this impression of old growth structures that we are kind of mimicking in our project. So I was really impressed, and so I just like to go through forests, and going through those forests was specifically nice because it's continuous. So we only visited a small patch of this Białowieża National Park, but still there was like this irregularity in forest structure, which I really like. So there's very old trees, there's very young trees, there's a lot of rejuvenation, there's a diversity of deadwood structures, and also from sounds, just birds, and we also saw other mammals around, and that is really what I hope to see more in other forests, so that there is more natural dynamics really being promoted.
Thanks a lot. I hope that maybe one day you will try to see from space if this forest structure differences can be seen in Białowieża Forest. Great. Thank you very much, and have a nice rest of the conference.
Yeah, thanks a lot, and also thanks to all those organizers here, and specifically all these young researchers. I really like this open atmosphere, and it's very nice. Definitely will come again.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
I'm Katharina Kasper. I'm a PhD student here at the Mammal Research Institute, and I do research on the behavioral adaptations of wolves towards humans with Dries Kuiper and Martin Hulski.
And you originally come from which country?
I'm from Germany. I currently have my main residence in Berlin, but I try to come here as often as possible to this amazing place.
And you are here at the conference presenting a poster and a presentation, so you're presenting part of your research. Could you tell us a little bit about some findings or main results of your research for now?
Yeah, that's true. When I started my PhD, we established a playback experiment, actually not in Białowieża, but in Borytuchowskie in the north of Poland, for the simple reason because we wanted to investigate the behavior adaptations that wolves get to having a lot of humans around, and at the same time being protected, and Białowieża was at that time not a good place for doing that because it's a rather human-free area, but also at the same time there were a lot of things going on with the construction of the border wall. So Borytucholskie was just an easier choice because it's a very human-modified habitat, and there's a lot of more common activities going on, just tourists, and there's hunting seasons, but also logging that is rather absent from this area. And when we put up camera traps, we also attached two speakers and played sounds to them, human voices, dog sounds, and also some birds to control. And we tested a bunch of covariates to that to see what would determine their reaction to it. But their reactions overall showed that they were very fearful regarding humans and also the dogs, actually.
Wait a second. So
Yes.
so it worked this way that like you put a camera in the forest, the animal goes like in the range of the camera, and when camera sees it, it triggers a speaker which is like, for example, human speaking or a dog sound or a cat sound played.
Yes,
And then
it's
you
like
see on the
this.
camera the reaction of the animals. And which animal's reaction did you study?
Yeah, so first the video starts recording, and after a few seconds the sound will play, simply to see what the animals were doing and then get a difference into what they were doing afterwards. They heard the sound. Of course, we had a lot of videos. It was really a lot of fun to also see the human reactions to our sounds, especially because the human voices were colleagues from this institute reading children's stories to them, and they wanted to know what's going on.
I like
But,
mushroom picking people or other people enjoying in the forest.
Exactly. But I filtered for wolf videos only, which among these thousands of videos came down to just over 100.
So what was the wolf reaction to humans? You said that they rather reacted. They were rather escaping. Yes.
Yeah, so we tried to figure out what would distinguish between the dog and the bird sounds, and we looked at the general body language and tried to identify certain variables that would tell us more about the differences. And we came up with that running actually explains a lot, but also the wolves lowering their heads, which is connected to them maintaining their habitats, sniffing around and being rather inattentive to what's going on.
So wait, because you mentioned, so you had dog sounds, human sounds, and
Birds.
control like bird sounds, like as a
Exactly.
neutral sound or something.
Yeah,
And they
just-
react most strong to humans or to dogs?
Yeah, it's very significant, very strongly more fearful to humans, but also dogs were different from the control sounds, so that we can speak about an effect there as well.
Okay, interesting, because Borytucholskie, like it's, as you said, like there is a bit more human activity, so maybe some would expect that the wolves, I don't know, lose the fear to humans or something, but the fear, it seems, is still there.
That was exactly our hypothesis. We wanted to do that test because in theory, if you have so many humans around, and wolves are also protected for a long time, and the wolves there were back since a decade, so they definitely had the chance to get adapted, to get habituated to that. It would be advantages to them if they would do that, but we found that they didn't. And actually in Europe there's a lot of cases now being reported of fearless wolves very close to humans showing up, so that's why there's this hypothesis. But we suggest, based on our results, that it would take more than just protecting the wolves for them to become habituated, like for example humans feeding the wolves or other and reinforcing or rewarding experiences they would have.
Okay, so it's not enough that the humans are just there, but they rather get habituated than when the humans, for example, feed them or something.
Based on our results, yeah.
Cool, that's super interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last question that I wanted to ask you is about your experience in Białowieża Forest. That like you are here, you are a PhD student, and like, what do you think about the forest or the village, or like what are your impressions about here? Like some short impressions.
I really love being here because it's a rather, except the stuff going on the border wall, but the atmosphere among the village and also at the institute and people attached to it is very peaceful and very welcoming and very open to everyone visiting, and I really enjoy it. It's a very, very special place, both in nature and in social life, and it's I would recommend to everyone.
Oh, thanks a lot then. And please enjoy the rest of the conference and the rest of your PhD experience in Białowieża.
Thank you so much.
Dziękujemy za wysłuchanie podcastu Naukowe Radio Białowieża. Nagrywanie jest możliwe dzięki Ministerstwu Nauki i Szkolnictwa Wyższego w ramach konkursu Społeczna Odpowiedzialność Nauki. Do widzenia.